Hold on. And welcome to this week's episode of Two Guys on Politics with my co-host, former Illinois Congressman Bill Lipinski, and me, of course, Ray Hanania. It's September 29, 2025, and this is season 4, episode 27. And we're broadcasting live on WNZK AM 690 radio in Detroit on the USA Radio Network. I was in Detroit, and a lot of people came up and said they listened to the program. So now we want to get you guys to send us emails. So we'll talk about that during the show, which we had a lot of topics from James Comey all the way to the election in New York and all the changes, Trump's peace plan in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, and ICE agents in Chicago. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back right after these messages. And I'm Ray Hanania.
And I'm Bill Lipinski, and I want to welcome all our listeners to our radio broadcasts and our pod broadcasts. And now I want to turn it back to the man who knows everything about everything, Mr. Ray Hanania. Raymond?
And we were talking about Detroit and Dearborn. I was there this weekend. So many people came up to me and said they listened to the program on radio there. And I was going to say that, they should look us up at Two Guys on Politics and send us some comments.
Absolutely.
that I could share with Bill Lipinski. And we'll try to read some of those, on air next time we do our show. But for this show, Bill, we got a lot of stuff. I mean, in segment 1, we're going to talk about Trump and James Comey. And then I'm sure you saw, or maybe you saw some of the news this weekend where they had hundreds of ICE agents all over swarming in Chicago to crack down on illegal aliens. And they did make some arrests, but it bothered me the way they were being treated by people yelling and screaming at them and stuff. And then we have, I think, what was the other one? That Trump was going to meet with the Democrats, right? And
Yes.
talk about
And
the
budget.
national budget.
Yes.
So we can talk about all that during segment 1. And segment 2, we'll talk a little bit about Gaza, then the war in Ukraine, and then the race for New York City mayor. So James Comey, where do I know that guy's name from, Bill? Is he like a new? No, I'm just joking.
I can't understand Trump going after this guy. And there's no question that Trump is going after him. I believe it's political prosecution. He's
a petty guy, isn't he, Trump?
I'm not going to say that. I don't want him coming after me. You can say it, though, Ray.
Yeah, he's very petty.
I can have the whole program for myself. But here, Comey, I think, helped him enormously when he beat Hillary Clinton. If you remember, 2 weeks before the election, he announced that he found some new emails dealing with Hillary Clinton and her private server. And he's going to investigate those to see if there's anything that she might be charged with. 2 weeks before the election. Okay, a week before the election, he said, nope, there's nothing there. She's perfectly all right. But by that time, a lot of people, I believe, has said, well, we're going to vote for Trump because there must be something going on here with Hillary Clinton and these emails. Now, we jump ahead 5-6 years. Trump wants to indict this guy, convict this guy, of a crime that no one other than Trump and his former personal attorney, who is now this chief prosecutor in the case against Comey, think that he's guilty of anything. I mean, I think it's just outlandish, and I think it's a further violation of everything that this country has stood for, since its inception. I mean, this is a political persecution. I don't happen to like Comey, and I thought what he did to Hillary Clinton, even though I didn't want to see her as president, was a terrible thing to do 2 weeks before the election. That's my feelings on the
Yeah,
situation. I don't
yeah,
see anything good whatsoever.
yeah. I remember that email scandal that never went anyplace.
Right.
But it should have because they did that to Trump. They basically did, depending on, they've both been doing it. The Republicans and the Democrats have been doing it to each other. They investigated Trump. Remember when they said he had all those documents at his Palm Beach home and they wanted to prosecute him? He was probably convicted. I can't even remember what he was convicted of because it's been such a blur since he became president. They threw everything out, all his convictions and his problems. But yeah, I mean, this is the kind of trash politics that we have to put up with in America today. Instead of talking about the real issues that face Americans, we're wasting our time with the president wanting to indict and then prosecute James Comey. Whether he was good or bad at this point is so irrelevant to most American people. And you're right. This is Trump doing something personally for himself. And
Absolutely.
apparently, everything he does is for himself, not for the people of America. And I'm getting really upset with him because he keeps doing this at every level. They said that Comey had committed perjury over testimony he gave to Congress 5 years ago. But we know the truth is that Comey criticized Trump, and Trump doesn't forget a person who criticizes him. And then he goes after him. And it just really it's really disturbing, isn't it?
Well,
Because
it's terribly disturbing. And let me just say quickly,
yeah,
and then I'll give the platform back to you.
that's
Uh,
her.
to balance the scale, as you mentioned, the Democrats went after Trump in I
Yeah.
think 3 or 4 different cases when he was out of office. Those were all political persecutions too. You can find very, very few, if any, people who were objective that really thought there was any reason to go after him in those 4 different cases. So yes, the Democrats have done it to him, but it's got to stop someplace, Ray. It is
It,
not good for our country. It is not good for the image of our country around the world. We seem like a banana republic. Really, it's very, very disturbing, very upsetting to me.
yeah, I mean, listen, part of the problem goes back to the precedent set by the Democrats going after Trump and Trump responding. I blame it on all the a lack of leadership. I mean, the Democrats don't have any leaders. The leader of the House Democratic Caucus is this guy Hakeem Jeffries, and honestly, he's horrible. He's from New York. He's horrible. He's a hypocrite. He says one thing out of one side of his mouth and he does something else. And it's created this pattern that we've seen. And we'll talk a little bit later about even Governor Pritzker on the issue of immigration. No, nobody's addressing the problems. All they do is care about themselves. And that's what this whole James Comey issue is, just another example. It's not like Trump is doing something that the Democrats haven't done. What Trump is doing is what the Democrats have done. They both are doing the same thing. It's just a waste of money, weaponizing the Justice Department. When Trump ever gets out of office, if he doesn't try to hold on beyond his 4 year, second four
Please,
year
let's
term.
not let's not even think about that.
But a lot of people push back, say, "Oh, he's never going to do that." That's a lot of political baloney. But I'm saying, no. Trump has the personality where he thinks
Yes,
he can do it. The Democrats, if they take the White House back, could do the exact same thing to FBI Director Kash Patel, who I don't know if he even has the qualifications to be the FBI director, and they could investigate him. This back and forth is really a disrespect to the American people. I
no,
mean, that's
it
what the
is.
real problem is.
That's a very good point that you raised. It is disrespectful to the American people that we have the people in office like this, and they do not have more respect for the American people. Terrible.
Yeah, and I should point out that all these people like Hakeem Jeffries and James Comey, they all come from New York City. Hillary Clinton, she was a carpetbagger senator in New York, the state of New York, going there. So I have to start asking questions about New York City. What the heck is going on over
Well, the
there?
Democrats
That's
have a terrific dynamic leader in the Senate. My friend
oh,
Schumer, Senator Schumer.
oh, there you go. Yeah, right. He's doing a great job.
I was
Is he
just
still? Is he still together? I mean, is he? What do you think of him? Seriously,
Well,
Schumer.
I'm biased. I knew Chuck very, very well when I was in the House of Representatives. He and I were there for about 8 or 9 years. We were very good friends. I get along well with Schumer. Uh, I don't particularly like his politics.
Yeah,
He's a nice guy. Uh, in the Senate, I don't, the only thing that he's done in the Senate is stop Dick Durbin from becoming the Democratic leader in the Senate, which I am eternally grateful for.
yeah,
That's about all he's done as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. And of course, we have. Maybe we can skip ahead to this because Schumer is involved with this, with the trying to prevent the uh, government from shutting down because they don't have enough money, right? Isn't that what the big deal is? That Schumer is saying that he thinks he has a shutdown fix, a way to stop it. But it looks like both sides, in my opinion, are just playing politics with even the shutdown, of the government, that they need to pass a spending bill to reopen government for 7 to 10 days. That's what Schumer is suggesting. Why don't we just do it for 7 to 10 days, and that'll give us more time to figure out how to get past it and keep the government, from shutting down. But it just, I'm just our credibility as a country. We're like a circus. People are looking at us from other countries and wondering what the hell is going on in America. One day we're leader of the free world. We fight all the Nazis, the fascists, the dictators and the tyrants, and we wave the flag of principle and the rule of law and human rights. And the next thing you know, the Washington D.C. has turned into a circus where a president just on his own whim. Trump controls the Congress and the Senate, and yet he does everything by executive order, which I think is a reflection of his personality. He wants to claim credit for everything because I think he's working for a Nobel Peace Prize. He brought that up at the United Nations, which in and of itself was an embarrassment. I had to hide my face in shame with our president going up there lobbying the United Nations members to tell them that he should be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. It's really a joke. We're at the point where things are bad. I don't see us moving forward. The economy sucks. Gasoline prices are terrible. Grocery prices are terrible. Insurance rates are terrible. Health insurance isn't that great, but their rates are going up. I'm just worried. I'm sick about what's happening in our country.
Well, I'm right there with you. Let me just tell you, yesterday I spent probably 2.5 hours listening to Democrats and listening to Republicans just talking about the possible shutdown of our government and what their positions were. And you would not believe that they were talking about the same piece of legislation, the things that they were saying, entirely different. And
Yeah,
I'll tell you truthfully, I don't know who to believe. I don't know what I should think, because neither one of them to me made any real sense. The only thing that came through to me was whatever is beneficial to their party is the position that they want to take. And right now, both parties think a government shutdown will play to their advantage. So that's why I'm afraid we may very well have a government shutdown. But what does that mean? That means
right.
about 25% of the people don't work, 25% of the federal government don't work, but the other 75 will go on like nothing has happened. So it is not really the big deal that people say it is, other than I think the people we have in the top echelons of government act like children. You
Right.
know, that's the problem I have.
Yeah, and I was going to just go back to Comey for a while too because I'd forgotten. Comey was the guy who was leading the investigation into Trump's Russian election,
Yes.
interference thing, and that really is what Trump is most mad about too, I think. But you're right, he's acting like a child. What's the big story of it? What do you remember from Trump's speech to the United Nations? That he got on an escalator and it stopped working, and he believed it was because someone was trying to embarrass him when
Yeah, he
when
wanted to
the
have an
escalator stopped.
investigation. Yeah.
Yes, and he bumped into his wife when the escalator stopped. He kept walking and he bumped into her, which is probably the first time they've actually had any physical contact, probably in I don't know how many years. But it's like children, with a lot of power, running this country, and it's embarrassing. I don't think this country has been any lower than it ever has been in terms of our national politics, and we just can't seem to get out of it. Nobody wants to change it. They're all playing into the same, talk. They want to protect themselves, more than they want to protect the American people. And I don't get it. I don't see any way out of it because I don't see a leader in the Democratic Party that could make it, that could bring us back. When two kids fight, the father usually steps in, right? And resets the relationship, and then everybody moves forward and the family's back together. The president is technically the person that should be doing it, but he's the baby. He's the biggest baby out of them all. I mean, look what he did to Jimmy Kimmel. Now, I never liked Jimmy Kimmel, but he actually made Jimmy Kimmel into a 300 times more popular late night host. And it's like babyish. Look what we're talking about today, right? We're not even talking about the serious problems. We're talking about the circus entertainment that we're forced to watch every day in America, and that's really disturbing. And I hate to be so down on America because America is such a important foundation for freedom for the rest of the world, but it's like deteriorating. It's almost like the Roman Empire ready to collapse. And that really scares me. That's starting to scare me and bother me.
I think we need to take a little break here, Ray, because both of us, I think, are rushing to the deep end of this. And I don't want to give up hope for the American Republic. I want us to still, try to save ourselves from ourselves and our leadership.
Yeah, but it does take finding somebody who has the courage, right, to stand up. And from the Republican and the Democratic Party, and there are a couple, but they're just not enough. It's just too easy to play politics with the issues rather than to find the solutions for them. So
Well,
I don't
I
know.
really believe it's up to each and every American to realize how important that they are and that they have to do something to get us back on the right track so we are no longer the laughing stock of the world. It's a terrible fall that we have made from the most powerful nation on this planet to where no one takes us seriously any longer because our leadership keeps going around and telling everybody that he ought to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I also blame the uh, American people too. Let's face it, they're inebriated. They're like drunk, and they're hallucinating. They're the ones that empower Trump. He
Right.
has the far right, and it isn't just the far right anymore. It's the right, and the center is smaller and smaller and getting narrower. And then the far left is no longer just the far left. It's the left. It's a Democratic Party. And they're all pandering to their own leaders, because in a way, this is like the flaw in American politics. If you can't, if you a bad leader knows that if they find something to hate, and they get the rest of the public to hate that, whatever it is. They don't need to be forced, they don't need to be held accountable for why they haven't solved the problems that they were elected to solve. So a bad leader can't solve any problems. So what they do is they find a distraction to deflect from their own failure. And that distraction is this national divide that we have, this extremism on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, calling everybody names. It suits them. So they don't ever have to be accountable. That's what this situation does. It takes away the requirement to be accountable to the voters. And the worst part is that the taxpayers and the voters, we're falling into the trap and we're like taking sides. You know, we have all these people that defend Trump and all these people that defend Hakeem Jeffries and, you know, all these people that, you know, want to blame everything on the other side, but never on themselves. I would, if I, as a Democrat, I would be upset with the Democrats for not addressing the real issues. And Republicans, you would think they would be the same because in the end, it comes out of their pocket and their taxes and their money. We're the ones that get hurt, not the president. Even if he doesn't get a third term, like I'm sure he wants, he's going to do very, very well unless somebody comes back after him and tries to prosecute him.
Oh, I'm sure they will. If the Democrats take over, I'm sure that they will.
That'd
Uh,
probably
well,
be Jimmy
Ray,
Kimmel.
our founding fathers foresaw this happening. They were very, very strongly against political parties. They wanted no part of political parties. George Washington wanted no part of political parties either. He said it would be bad for the country. If the country was ever to fail, it would probably be because of political parties. And I think that our founding fathers, particularly George Washington, was absolutely correct. We have to get this situation straightened out before it destroys us.
Yeah, and we're just making things worse, like this government shutdown thing. You're right; it does impact certain government offices, but for the most part, you and I and everybody that's out there working, it's not going to directly impact us right away, but it does send a bad signal about the image of this country. That how often does this happen? You know, I think the trigger date is October 1st, the day after the, you know, tomorrow, today being Monday, September 29th. At some point, you'd think that the fact that they can't come together shows that either both sides are trying to figure out a way to hurt the other side, or they're just not focused on serious issues. So it's really depressing.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
So so maybe we switch from this depression to another moment of tension. You know, there were hundreds of ICE agents that came to Chicago this past week. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the Department of Homeland Security. I saw some military people. I don't believe it was the National Guard that were with them. And for the most part, they were just like showing a presence. You know, it was almost like the Trump sent them to Chicago in a card game, you know, or a chess game with Governor J.B. Pritzker, who has built his entire campaign on opposing the Trump administration. If you were to ask anybody, what is it that Pritzker would do if he were going to run for president? One, it's far enough away so he doesn't have to answer the question. But two, you'd think he would have answered that question and say, I'm going to fight for lower taxes. I'm going to fight for, you know, all this stuff. Instead, Pritzker has made his big issue Trump. And again, it distracts from his failure as a governor in what is one of the worst states out of the 50 states on a lot of issues. We come up 48th out of 50. You know, we're right at the bottom of the list in terms of performance in a lot of different areas. So these ICE agents are baby Trump, sending a signal back to Pritzker that he's the boss and I can do whatever I want. Now, I felt bad for the ICE agents. because these are employees of the government, police agents. They're basically part of the policing system to protect our country, and they've been, uh, you know, demonized, by the public. I don't know if you saw these reports on TV where uh, Americans or people on the street, pedestrians, were yelling and screaming at them, chanting, "Go away," and calling them names. I mean, everybody has a right to protest. One guy was just yelling and screaming, calling him names, and they chased him. He was on a bike and he got away. That was one of the famous images, I think, of this past few days.
Oh, you think these ICE agents should be walking around with these masks on? I mean,
Well,
our Chicago Police Department doesn't wear masks. Why should the ICE agents wear masks?
well, that's an interesting point. That maybe I'm in favor of if they want to wear masks. It's like a COVID mask basically on the lower part of their face, but they are in uniform. They do wear uniforms, and they're ICE agents.
Do they
So
have
whether
name
they're,
tags?
pardon me.
They have name tags like the Chicago Police Department does?
You know what? I didn't look to, and I don't think I could see it whether it is, but I think there is a concern that they don't want to be doxxed. The way the government doxes students, and exposes them and puts their name out there and all their information so that everybody can hate you specifically rather than as a generic ICE agent. They can actually get your name. So I think it's part of the protection in today's environment where hatred drives people's actions more than
Well,
smart decisions.
do you think it's helping the ICE agents do their job by wearing masks and being somewhat aggressive in going after people?
Well, I didn't see, honestly, I didn't. They were walking around. They weren't that aggressive. I think they did target a some illegal aliens who were working at a tent that was set up next to the old Tribune building, and they did arrest three people. But for the most part, they were just walking around like a show of support. Now, as somebody who opposes illegal aliens entering the country. And I know that some people say, no, it's not illegal aliens, it's illegal, it's undocumented
No,
immigrants.
no,
And I
not
disagree. Yeah, I'm like you. I disagree with that term. It's illegal. It's a law. It's illegal. You come into the country illegally, you're illegal. End of story. Um, but I think that part of the problem is that these ICE agents, Trump is using them, and I disagree with that, to send a message to Illinois and Chicago. And I think, is a misuse and abuse of these ICE agents, who I respect because they do a great service for our country. There are some illegal aliens that are good people, and some illegal aliens that are bad. You and I talked about this at the last, podcast. Coming up with a solution. And apparently you and I are the only two people who are talking about a solution to the problem because nobody else is talking about it. I like your idea that if they were here, 5 years or longer, let them stay in the country and apply for citizenship. And if you're here under 5 years, you got to leave the country and apply from outside and be vetted. If you haven't committed a crime, hey, you can come back. But if you have committed a crime, don't come back. Keep your crime in your former country.
do we still have quota systems for immigrants? Do you know?
Only for the Middle East. Oh,
Only oh,
it's not.
here we go.
Well, I mean, listen, that's what it is. Trump issued that travel ban, right? He didn't
Yes.
do a travel ban for Mexico. He didn't do a travel ban for Poland. He didn't do a travel ban for Ireland, or he did a travel ban for like six predominantly Muslim countries. Now, some people call it a Muslim ban, but I don't. It's not a Muslim ban because there are 50, or I can't remember the total number. I think there are like 50 Muslim countries. He didn't ban everybody, Muslims, because if you're Muslim, you can't come into the United States. But there's certain countries that have terrible vetting of their people leaving the country, and we just can't trust them when they say, "Oh, this is a good person. He wants to come to the United States." I don't know. I don't know who that person is because they haven't done a good job in some of these countries that are completely surviving through disorder.
I'm not saying anything because I'd like to move on from the subject.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. You make a good point. Just by saying that, we're in very uncomfortable times. These are uncomfortable issues that we have to talk about. And sadly, these are the only issues that we have to talk about because nobody's talking about the real issues. I think it just feeds right into it. But also, we're going to cut it off because we're at 25 minutes anyway. So
Okay,
our first segment is over. Saved by the bell, Bill.
thank
But
God.
all right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion about uncomfortable issues here at Two Guys on Politics with Bill Lipinski and myself, Ray Hanania. We'll be right back right after these messages. And welcome back to Two Guys on Politics after we just finished our very depressing first segment with all these terrible issues going on. It's very making us miserable. I don't know if we're going to find any positives in this segment, but we do have a couple topics we're going to talk about. The first one is President Trump has initiated a 21-point peace plan on Gaza, and to try to bring this conflict between Israel and the Palestinians down to a close. I know the Palestinian Prime Minister has said that Hamas will not have a role in Gaza, which I think is a great thing. Hamas, in my opinion, has always been a terrorist organization. They've done everything to block the peace process. Whether you like the peace process, think it's deficient, not effective enough, that's besides the point. That's legitimate criticism, but you don't blow yourself up to prevent the peace process. And that's what Hamas did. And then launching their attack on October 7th, I think was just horrific. Although since October 7th, as we know, the Israelis have, for the 1,400 Israelis that were killed, we're not even sure what the total number was. The Israelis have killed 70,000 people in Gaza, destroyed 85 to 90% of all the buildings in Gaza and all the cities. I mean, hospitals, everything's been destroyed. And they moved the populations, they've forced the population, which is on the brink of famine, according to the United Nations, which Trump doesn't respect. They're facing famine, and what the Palestinians and most of Europe now says is a genocide. It isn't just pro-Palestinian people saying it; it's these leaders like Britain and France. They've acknowledged that there's this genocide taking place, and these women and children being killed. Just looking at these videos of these kids, I really think that if Trump were serious and he wanted the Nobel Peace Prize, if he could actually end this war in a fair way, I might nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well,
But I don't.
don't you think his 21-point program is a real try on his part to end this conflict?
No, I
You
looked at
know?
it, and all he's trying to do is make the Israelis happy. He wants to end the conflict without making the Israelis mad. And the Israeli government is run by the most extremist, far right religious groups in Israel. They're the ones backing Netanyahu, who I think is a horrible person. There are a lot of better Israeli leaders that, if they were in government and leading the government, I don't think we'd be where we were at today. But this is just a viciousness on Netanyahu's part. And I think Trump is afraid of that issue for some reason, because some members of his Republican Party have been very critical of Israel and what Israel has been doing, because they're feeling it from their voters. You know, the polling in the United States shows that a vast majority of Americans are upset with Israel and what Israel's doing. And I think that hurts the Republican core base, which is built on Israel almost. And I mean, other issues too, but Israel is a core foundation of that, hard right conservative foundation.
But I
And
have read where there's two members of the coalition, two of the leading members of the coalition, and Netanyahu, have already come out against this peace plan because they want to just annihilate, every Palestinian that they can find, unfortunately. But several of the other parties in the Knesset have said that if Netanyahu really accepts this peace plan and is willing to stop hostilities, they will be happy to come forward and support him in this effort so he would not lose his
right,
prime ministership. So he
right.
really has an out, it seems to me, if he really wants to find peace. And because of that, Trump should really pressure him to accept this deal because he will not lose his prime ministership.
Well, keep in mind now, under normal circumstances, I would agree with you. The
Okay.
problem is that Benjamin Netanyahu in 2020 was indicted on for three what would be the equivalent of felony charges here in the United States, and he was launched a small minor assault against Palestinian militants back then to distract the country, and then of course Hamas, and depending, and I only say this just because I want to do the chronology. Hamas responded to those attacks on October 7th with this outrageous, horrible level of carnage. And now Netanyahu has elevated the conflict to probably the worst heights we've ever seen. This isn't about peace. This is about Netanyahu holding on to government in almost the same way that Donald Trump is trying to hold on to government. Netanyahu, if this war hadn't started, would probably have been indicted and jailed for the charges that he has faced. There are three charges that were, and which he was indicted for, that had to do with corruption, and he's been. This conflict has allowed to create 4 to 5 years of distance between those charges when they were first made and
Is
today.
there a statute of limitations on these charges?
Yeah, it's called life and death in Israel.
Oh,
They just basically kill you and hope that, and they change the government and they appoint new judges and they try to. They're Netanyahu is doing through war what Trump is doing through politics, with his Trump's extreme politics. And that worries me because when someone wants to distract from the reality of what's happening, they do crazy things. And this idea that Trump might do something crazy, I don't think, the talk that he might start a war just so he can stay in office longer. Netanyahu basically is doing that very same thing at this moment, killing all these people, pandering to the anger in Israel, where people are celebrating the killing of little children. I didn't celebrate the killing of Israeli kids October 7th. That was horrible. And like I said, I believe Hamas is a terrorist organization. But at this point, I think Netanyahu's government is a terrorist organization. And I don't think Trump is really addressing the real issues. I think he's trying to just find a way to calm things down, take the focus off of the conflict, take the criticism off of Israel, and make it look like he's doing Israel a favor so that he could get back to what it is that he wants to do, which is to make a lot of money and strengthen his own political base. But the plan that I've seen was just totally empty. It doesn't suggest anything significant. It just temporarily pauses this
Let
conflict
me
for a
ask you this
while?
question. From the reports that I have read,
Mm.
most of, if not all of the Arab and Muslim countries in the Middle East are on board for this.
Yes,
That
they are
true?
because it's a better option than the one that they have today, where they're upset because of Netanyahu attacking Qatar and targeting the negotiators who were trying to bring the ceasefire and conflict to an end. Israel thought they were killing negotiators, but actually killed family members of the negotiators, the sons of and kids of some of these negotiators. So it's the one thing that you mentioned earlier is the only hope, and that is that if Netanyahu embraces this peace process, it might revive the Israeli left. And it's more, I wouldn't call them the left anymore. I'd say the center to stand up and give Netanyahu the votes he needs to stay in office so that he can break with the extremists. And if that were to happen, I think eventually they would be able to get rid of Netanyahu
Well,
and
you think if
find
they get
another
rid of,
leader.
if say they get rid of Netanyahu, okay, now what would the peace plan look like then?
Then I think they go back to one complete elimination of Hamas, give the Palestinian Authority the power to run Gaza and the West Bank the way they were supposed to have been to do it. But Gaza, they isolated Gaza. I mean, I think the Israelis made a major mistake when they withdrew their forces in 2005, isolated Gaza, thinking that they could control Gaza from the outside. And all they ended up doing was making the situation so bad that people were angry and they would turn to violent vengeance, and retribution. So the alternatives here are horrible. But if they can get Netanyahu out and get at least some sanity back into the leadership of Israel with Hamas gone, and they're pretty much almost 99% gone, I think we might be able to find a way to move forward. And that would be good for us because we're the ones, the American people, who are paying for this war.
Yes, that's very, very true. And I would like to see us get rid of it, but I would like to see a real peace treaty between Israel and the rest of the Arab Muslim countries so that we could really try to build up the Middle East and stop having this war that's been going on. Well, I'll go back to 1948 when Israel was founded, but it's been going on, I'm sure, a lot longer than that. Uh, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help the Europeans. It helps no other country. And it certainly doesn't help the people who live in the Middle East, whether they're Palestinians or whether they're Jewish people. War is harmful to everyone, not just the combatants themselves.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about Israel is that Netanyahu has undermined the status of the Jewish state, Israel. Netanyahu has so damaged the brand of Israel by his actions that when you think that America funds Israel, empowers Israel, and yet the majority of American people no longer support Israel, there's a problem there that's going to come back and I think really hurt Israel. So if I were an Israeli, I'd be looking and thinking, oh, how do we get out of this? Get rid of Netanyahu, find a better leadership. But they're no different than we are in the United States. We can't find any better leadership. We're stuck with horrible leadership here. And I think the Israelis are in the same position. I don't know.
I'll let you have the final word on this subject.
That's it. That's a final word. I wish there were a final word on the Middle East conflict, but
There
this has
isn't.
been going on my whole life. So
Yes.
it's never going to be a final word. It's a tragedy. We've never really had any genuine effort, I think, to involve it. Let's talk about another tragedy, and that's Ukraine in the war with the Russian invaders. Just this past week, I don't know if you saw the news, the Russians sent in 500 drones targeting civilian sites. I mean, they're basically doing what the Israelis are doing, accept that the Ukrainians have our support, but they're unable to stop this. They can't stop these drones from coming in, killing civilians. And when I look at that war, it's just horrible. That's another one where, we haven't shown leadership. We haven't done enough. I mean, are you there? I think there was some talk. You've heard the talk that uh, J.D. Vance, the vice president, said that President Trump is considering giving Ukraine the authority to use long-range missiles to strike Russian cities. I think that's exactly what needs to happen because right now the Russians aren't paying a real price at all. Our sanctions are not working because we're weak.
I think that the Ukrainians should get the weapons that can strike the refineries in Russia because it takes 6 months to put those back online. And the more the refineries that the Ukrainians can take out, the tougher and tougher the economic policy becomes for the Russians to continue this war. But unfortunately, we're limiting how many of these long range rockets we will allow them to utilize. Once
Right,
again, it's a situation where I've said this before the Trump administration, the Biden administration has been willing to allow the Ukrainians to bleed the Russians and bleed the Russians, not defeat them, just keep killing the Russians. The Russians keep killing the Ukrainians because it's advantageous to us to weaken the Russians as much as possible. But we don't want them to get pushed too far because we don't want them invading Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, and spreading this war. Because if they do that, then we're going to have to put boots on the ground, and we don't want to do that.
yeah.
And I,
Listen, go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
no, I'm finished on that subject. I
Well,
said
I was going to say then that we've been pulling our punches with Russia. We don't
yes,
we keep saying we don't want to allow this conflict to get worse, but I think that what we're doing is allowing the conflict to get worse because at some point there's going to be a major mistake by the Russians. They're going to hit the wrong capital. Some missiles will go in the wrong direction. And I think the one thing we haven't done in Russia is inflict pain on the Russian people to force the Russian people to stand up to Putin. Because I don't believe the Russian people are bad people. I think it's Putin and his government. He's nuts. And you know how they used to talk about Biden, not having conscious, that he wasn't in full control of his faculties. I'm wondering if Putin is having mental problems because of his age, and if he's having some issues too, because he doesn't look good. And Trump also, to come think of it, Trump doesn't look that good sometimes either. You're wondering, what are you talking about?
and how does Bibi Netanyahu look to you?
Bibi Netanyahu looks like a guy who's scared that if this war stops, he's going to end up in a jail cell in a striped suit. And I think that
I'm
as
sure
long as
Trump will send a plane in to rescue him, bring him to the
uh,
United States.
the way we did with the Shah of Iran, remember
Right,
that?
exactly.
And
Yes.
that was our big problem that caused us to have a major problem with Iran. Instead of stepping in and arresting this guy because he had the worst violence against his own people, he killed more than 1 million Iranians using the Savak, the secret police. We protected the guy so that the people of Iran became our enemies. They're going, why are you protecting this guy who killed so many of our family members? And all it did was reinforce a hatred against us. And we're still paying the price for that so many years later, even after Ronald Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter over that issue. But it's not encouraging. I hope Trump does give Ukraine permission to use long range missiles, but I know that the Ukrainians are the ones that are dying, and I don't know why we have the right to give the Ukrainians permission to do anything. They should get the missiles from other countries if the United States doesn't want to step up and demand and defend freedom around the world.
Okay.
And this takes us to another terrible situation. Not so much. The irony is this is probably the least terrible topic out of all the topics we've talked about. The New York City race.
Oh,
Mayor Eric Adams withdrew. He dropped out of the mayoral election bid. He's had so many problems. Eric Adams was charged last year with bribery, wire fraud, and illegal campaigning. He's been fighting it. People
oh,
see him as
I thought President
corrupt.
Trump jumped in and said that those are false charges. Stop persecuting this man. Didn't he
And
do that?
how close President Trump is to the truth and
Oh,
justice, right?
absolutely.
And the legal system. He'd
And
be
you
the worst
say
judge.
that Mayor Adams dropped out. I have a feeling he was dropped out because Trump probably called him and said,
Yes,
reinstitute those
yes,
charges if you don't get
yes.
out of the race.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I was just going to say that Trump probably called Eric Adams and said, "Listen, if you get out of the race, I'll make sure that you're not charged. You won't have to worry about all these charges." But on the other hand, he didn't say anything. He wants Andrew Cuomo to win, and of course, we know that a number of years ago, like 4 years ago, Cuomo was charged with sexually harassing 13 women when he was governor, and he was forced to step down as governor. To me, it's they couldn't find somebody better to run for mayor of Chicago. Cuomo got beat by the Zoran Mamdani, who is a socialist in the sense of he supports programs that support the people of New York, and and it showed in his election. The people of New York like him. He was an
And to give them
overwhelming victory.
everything free, they should like them. They won't have to
Well,
pay for anything. No
well,
rent, no health care, no food. He's giving them free food too, isn't he? I mean, the
well,
man's a
free.
social.
When we say free food, it's paid for by the government. And where does the government get the money to pay for all this free product? From the people that are getting the free product, the taxpayers.
I mean, the
They
people
pay the
who are
government.
working hard to put food on the table and they're having a lot of it taken away from them. Okay. That is socialists that you support.
Yes, I absolutely. I got to tell you, I absolutely support Mamdani, and I hope he wins. I think that he's moderated much, and I think that when you step into office, there's a responsibility, and if he's a good person, I think he'll recognize that responsibility and do what needs to be done. I don't trust people who've already been accused of committing crimes and doing bad things in office. Because once somebody does something bad in office, they're going to continue doing bad things in office. That's why I don't like Eric Adams and I don't like Andrew Cuomo. They're just terrible, and I don't believe they'll ever learn their lesson. But
Well,
Trump is the worst part, taking sides with them.
what about the Red Beret? What do you think of him?
Curtis Sliwa. I always liked Curtis, was a good guy, but he doesn't have the vote. He doesn't have enough vote. Even if he were to get out of the race, when you look at the polling with Eric Adams out of the race, Andrew Cuomo still doesn't have enough votes to beat this guy, Mamdani. They said that he's still far short with Eric Adams out of the race, according to the polling, because a lot of Eric Adams's vote didn't all go to Cuomo. It's a lot of it is going to Mamdani. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But the manipulation, why have an election? I mean, why don't they just send the National Guard in there and impose a new, mayor for New York and get it over with? The Trump basis for elections. What do you
You
think?
are for violating the Constitution. You've already told me
I
that.
think I
There's
think
no
the
reason.
Constitution has been violated already so many times that my violation would be the least of its worries compared to the way Trump and others have trampled upon the Constitution. It's just horrific. It's just horrific.
Listen, what he should do is reinstall Mayor Giuliani as the mayor of New York City, Trump.
Yeah, although Giuliani has had his problems too. He's a Trumpster. Giuliani is a mini Trump. He's like mini me. He's a small Trump, smaller Trump. He's, I don't know if you remember seeing that mini me series on television, but that's what Giuliani is. He's like a little mini me, and mini Trump. Now, we've gone through all of this and we're pretty much almost near the end, but I wanted to say, Bill, you want to give out your email to listeners if they want to send you email?
Bill Lipinski at hotmail.com. Very, very simple, very direct. Bill Lipinski at hotmail.com. The only part of it that might be difficult, it's BILLLIPINSKI. There's three L's in a row. Please send me your comments. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and the same thing with me, Ray Hanania. My email is rghanania, Hanania, at gmail.com. I'll go to our two guys on politics.com and make sure that it's there. But we would love to hear from you on maybe we're missing the good things, right? Because we're following the stories that are in the news media, which survives on conflict and tragedy and death and destruction. But if there's a good story out there, really good political story, we want to hear from you. And if you don't agree with us, we will always respect you. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Because I know Bill doesn't agree with me all the time, but I still respect him. He's a good guy.
And
All
Ray
right,
is
Bill.
wrong most of the time, but I still like him. So we stick together.
All right. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski. This is Two Guys on Politics, and we'll make sure we see you next week when we have some uplifting conversations.
Let's hope. See you later, everybody. Bye bye.